All right, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are going to get started in a couple minutes, but while we wait for others to join, please drop a note in the chat and tell us where you are tuning in from, and also tell us what kind of business you are about to start or have started. All right, Zach from New York, thank you for joining us. We have Aisha from Atlanta. Hi, Ebony from Baltimore. Hi, Jason. All right, we have VA joining us, New Jersey. Hi, thank you for joining us from San Francisco. If you're just joining, please let us know what type of business you've started or are thinking of launching. Hi, Erin. Thank you for joining us. All right, we have someone joining us from Florida. All right, it's great to see all these different types of businesses. Right, we have web consulting. Screen printing, someone with a menswear business, freelance illustration and graphic design, photography. It's always great to see a diverse mix of creatives starting different businesses. So like many of our webinars offer foundational tools that any of you can use and apply to the different types of businesses that you are building. All right, so I'm going to get things started while others join us. So again, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Carly Ann with the Parsons Entrepreneur Academy. And tonight's webinar, we are excited to be working with our wonderful co-sponsor, Parsons Continuing and Professional Education, to bring you this webinar. So here we invite successful and inspiring entrepreneurs and leaders to share their stories and the lessons they've learned along the way. For those of you joining us for the first time, Parsons Entrepreneur Academy is a platform that empowers creative entrepreneurs like yourselves to build sustainable businesses around your art. And we achieve this through our 3 pillars that include mentoring, training, and community. And we're always happy to announce that since launching our platform globally this year, we were recently honored with Fast Company's as one of their honorees for their 2021 World Changing Ideas list. If you'd like to find out more about all of the different products in our ecosystem, please visit parsonsentrepreneur.com. So in today's webinar, you are going to learn how to raise money for your creative business. And this webinar is going to be delivered by one of our amazing course authors, Lynn. So John is the course author for our How to Fund Your Creative Business course. And for all of you who decided to join us today, we're going to be giving you a special offer of 50% off of John's course, but you'll have to stick around till the end where I'll be providing further details on the offer and the code that you can use to redeem the offer. And also as a special bonus for tuning in today, we're going to provide all of you with a link to your very own network analysis spreadsheet. So if you take a look in the chat currently, you'll see a link where you can download the PDF to the network analysis spreadsheet. So John's going to be using this document to walk through some elements of his content today. So you can use it to follow along, and you can also keep it and revisit it and apply, use that tool and apply it to your fundraising strategy later on. So John's going to be presenting for approximately 50 to 60 minutes. He'll take questions throughout, but if you're going to ask questions throughout the webinar, we'll ask that you make them relevant to the pieces of content that he's just covered. If you have any general questions, you can still put them in the Q&A box, but just know that they'll be addressed towards the end, where we'll have an additional Q&A section that'll be about 15 to 20 minutes. Any questions that you have, please put them in the Q&A box. You'll see the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Don't put the questions in the chat. The questions that will be addressed will be the ones that are in the Q&A box. Also, if you look in the Q&A box, or when you put questions in the Q&A box, you'll see a thumbs up icon at the bottom of a question. If it's a question that you are also curious to know the answer to, feel free to like the questions that you see that are your favorite questions. If we have a lot of questions, John will address the ones that are upvoted and are at the top at the end first. All right. So now I'd like to introduce our webinar instructor, John Lynn. So as mentioned, he's one of our amazing course authors. He is also the co-founder of Stella, which builds startup accelerators with the world's most influential institutions. A globally recognized expert and industry leader in startup accelerators, John has spoken at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, as well as multiple locations in China, throughout Japan, Haiti, Aruba, and the US. His work has been published in Forbes, TechCrunch, and at the NASDAQ. And now I would like to hand it over to John so he can jump into all of the fun stuff. Hey, John.
Hey, Carly-Ann. Hi, everyone. So first, Carly-Ann and the Parsons Entrepreneur Academy, thank you for the great introduction and for setting up this webinar. I am going to jump right into it so that our audience here can get as far as possible in their funding journey in this webinar, and hopefully continue with us in our course on funding. First, I did not know that the Parsons Entrepreneur Academy was featured for one of the world's most innovative ideas, but being a course author and working on this academy with Parsons, I really am not surprised to hear it. It's an incredibly unique initiative that we haven't seen in any other university, and that is really bringing forth elements of, yes, great new content, but also mentorship and community in a way that, as you'll see in this presentation, I know is crucial to being a successful entrepreneur and also to raising funding successfully, which is why we are all here. So thank you, Parsons, Carly-Ann, for the introduction, but also for this great work. And with that, we are going to jump in. So like Carly-Ann mentioned, there is a document that you should all have access to now called the Network Analysis Document. We will be moving into that document at the end, or in the last fourth or so of the presentation. The goal is not that you've done a fun exercise during the webinar that you've invested your time in tonight. The idea is that you have an asset, that you have a tool that you can take from this webinar and apply when you open up your email tomorrow to start to get to work on your ideas. So this is something that we see as a living document. But I bring this up now because we're going to be working on it together. You don't need to start filling it out right now. let's just enjoy the conversation for the first 3/4 of this or so. And now I am going to share my screen. And we will begin. Great. So thanks for joining, everyone. Here's what the next 45 minutes or so are going to look like. Number one, we're going to do some introduction so that you know a little bit more about me and about Stella, not because we enjoy the opportunity to brag, but so that you know how to take advantage of our experience, our work, and our resources, both in this webinar, in the course, and however you decide to engage afterwards. We're also going to do some calibration, get a sense of who you are and where you're coming from in attending today's webinar. Why are you here? What are the things that you want to find out? We're going to move through a few important points on getting the most out of this webinar. And then we're going to talk about some high-level points around fundraising and fundraising, around funding and fundraising. Tactics, the landscape, some updates and predictions on where things will be, but things that you want to keep in mind as you either consider fundraising or actually go out and do it tomorrow, which, if you can't already tell, I recommend that you do. And then last, we are going to build out your new tool for beginning your funding journey, the network analysis document. So if that sounds good to everyone, and let me see if I can see the Q&A. Before we get in, I want to dip our toes into the good stuff right now. So I'm going to do an introduction and all of this, but if you've signed up for this webinar, you've seen some of the postings on social media, you've seen the registration page, and the real point that we want to make is that fundraising is an accessible activity that anyone can successfully achieve. And the challenges of it are many, and they're deep challenges, and it's not an easy thing to do. But being a business expert or being a financial expert is not the big challenge. The big challenge is in other things. Oops. So why are you able to do it now? Well, the reason that you're able to do it now and that you should do it now is first, because funding is just another kind of relationship. It's something that you achieve through relationships, through building trust with other individuals. Maybe they're at other organizations, maybe they represent much larger groups, but ultimately, no matter how impersonal the process seems, you're ultimately going to be convincing a few individuals to get on board with you. And so the challenge is about finding those relationships, developing them so that they build on trust, and then converting them to whatever you need. You can think about funding in business relationships in general, just like other relationships that you have in your life. Relationships that you have with your family members around your genealogy, relationships that you have with your friends around support and fun and growing together. Romantic relationships where the connection is love and emotions and long-term partnership. Funding is just another kind of relationship where it's about money. And so if you think about this mostly in terms of relationships, you already know how to do that, don't you? So that's the good news. This is just another kind of relationship that you need to learn to have. Nobody fills out an application into the universe and does it in such a compelling and complete way that the system rewards them with a check. That's just not the way it works in any situation, whether it's fundraising, getting traditional financing, winning a prize, being gifted a grant, getting a big donation. Whatever it is that you're trying to do, only people write checks, right? So it's really about finding those people and building that relationship. And the reason that you should do it now is not just because you can, not just because it's about relationships, but because starting now is your big advantage. It's your big advantage. The reason for that is because the earlier that you invite a potential funder or a potential investor into your process and into your journey, the more that they're going to see you achieve. They're going to see you be confused and be unsure, and then take small steps forward and get past your initial challenges, and then get to the next level, and then take a big leap forward and skip a few levels. And they're going to see you sprint forward and grow, and they're going to, at one point, want to be a part of it. So the earlier you bring them in, and even if you just have an idea, or you just have excitement, or you just have a co-founder that you want to work with, or you just have a product that you want to move forward, getting people involved now is your advantage, because it starts building that trust. And it's way easier and way quicker to make progress early on than it is sometimes later on. So you want to invite people to see you make that early progress and be a part of your fundraising journey now. The other reason that you want to start now is because the big challenge is access, right? We're talking about how funding is unlocked by individuals, and that unlocking occurs after you've built a relationship of trust. And that's stuff that takes a lot of time to do and a lot of energy to do, but it's not necessarily hard to do. What is hard to do is to find those people, find enough of them that you are sure to achieve your financing goal in the amount of time that you have, and that you can conduct them through the process of trust building in a systematic way, often enough that you get whatever funding you are able to get from that contact or that organization, and that it comes together in time to move your organization forward in the way that you want to move it forward. That's the challenge. And that's why the networking analysis document that we are going to fill out later is so important. But it's also why having a process is important, right? So understanding how to find these contacts, understanding how to start these conversations and initiate the trust building process is something that you want to have a process for itself, so that when you feel like you might be running out of time, or you are running out of energy, or you are running out of the money that you do have, or you're running out of your market opportunity, whatever it is, that process is what you're going to come back to, and that's going to show you, okay, we are making as much progress as we can, as fast as we can. Or it's going to show you we're a little bit behind and we can move faster. Or don't be worried, we're a little bit ahead and you've got more room for creativity and other things. So process is huge to challenging that fundamental challenge of access. Now, as you're going through this whole experience of fundraising, and we're going to talk about all this stuff in much more detail in this webinar, and we for sure talk about it in the course. A big theme here is the final thing in both this webinar and the course: to trust your risks, but to never risk trust. When you're in a creative space, which everybody here is, either because you're a creative, because you have a creative skill, or because you're looking to create a creative business or to get a creative business funded, it's a risk to be creative and to build your company, to get funding, to find solutions, to move forward. We all know this as creatives. But the thing that you never want to risk is the trust that you build with those that are supporting you and that are contributing to your progress, whether they're funders or not. So not only is the relationship the reason that you can fundraise, not only is the relationship the reason that you should start now, but the relationship is also the thing that you should optimize for. It's also the most important part of fundraising. It's not just the reason anybody can do it. It is the thing that you always want to care about the most. So never risk that trust. Now, before we go move forward into the rest of the presentation, let's get a clear idea of where you all are at in your fundraising journey. And I want to write down or see in the chat. Great. Oh man, this Q&A is not working for me. But let me see if I can see the chat. Okay, I can see the chat. So call out into the chat, where you are right now. We know that some of you have started your business. You have an existing small business that you're looking to get more funding for. Some of you have said you're starting an ed tech company. You want to think about getting funding for that. But where are you specifically in the funding journey? Have you started to fundraise? Have you already fundraised in the past? Are you fundraising right now? Let's have a few of you just call out where you're at in the chat here. Not started fundraising. Okay, thanks, Regina. Oh, we're funding, got some funding for prototyping. Early stage startup, just beginning, never done fundraising. You are all in the right place at the right time. This is amazing. Okay, about to start, awesome. Well, we are gonna have some serious impact together in this webinar then, because we are gonna get you the tools that you need to start funding now. Great, good. All right. So what are some of the questions? Let's shift gears while you all are putting into the chat here. And thank you for this energy. Thank you for these comments. Now tell me a couple of questions that you want to answer in this webinar, and we'll get them written down so that we are sure to have some of your most important questions answered by the end. And again, I still can't get to this Q&A. So what are the questions you want answered by the end of this webinar? Why did you decide to sign up for this registration? How do you find the right people? So who do I go to first? So that's a good question, Sam. What sorts of conversations should we have? Great. How do we send a cold email? We are going to talk about this. And should you send a cold email? That's a great one, Zach. Imposter syndrome. Yes, preach. That is one of the hardest parts of this. Like we said, the fundraising process is a relationship building process, but that also means it's a very social process, which means it's a very personal and emotional process. So things like imposter syndrome, things like panic and anxiety, these are all parts of it. Do's and don'ts of friends and family. How long should fundraising campaigns take? I love this. So we are just trying to make sure that we are answering your questions. We are not going to answer any of this right now. How much? Oh, that's a great question. How much research do we do? We should get to all these questions within the webinar itself, but we will return to this parking lot slide at the end of the presentation so that we are sure to get all your questions answered. Great. So now the introduction. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Stella and a little bit about myself so that you know how to take advantage of this opportunity here. We've still got plenty of time, so we're moving at a good clip. So what is Stella? Who am I? Why is Parsons working with us to put this funding class forward? Well, Stella is a pretty unique organization. We do two things. We work with startup accelerators to help them build out their mentor network, or to help them find startups, or to help them produce deal flow, or to train their teams that work with startups. And so we're working with accelerators and incubators. We're working with labs and studios every day to help them get really good at working with entrepreneurs, at working with people like you, who have all the inspiration, ability, creativity, energy in the world, and are coming to the accelerator to get the support, to get the community, to get the content that they need. And so that's one piece of what we do, is we work and build with accelerator programs. We've done that with corporations. We've done that with governments. We've done that with investor groups, and we've also done it with groups like Parsons. So we're really excited about this work, and thankful to be able to do it. We also build community in this industry. So we bring accelerators and incubators, studios, innovation labs, all those great groups we bring together on a regular basis. It's a new space. There are many different kinds of platforms that an entrepreneur can go to get support on their fundraising challenges, but also on building their team, also on building their brand, also on making their first sale, also on getting their co-founder, that platforms like the Entrepreneur Academy and accelerators and incubators generally are working on. And so we bring these programs all together to be peers and colleagues. We do that in many ways. The biggest is the annual summit that we run for the accelerator industry. We run the only global summit for startup accelerators. So we really literally know every program, almost every program in the world. We work with many of them. And so we are seeing through this work what is going on with entrepreneurs everywhere, how the landscape for funding is changing, whether it's why it's becoming more competitive and more saturated today, even though there's more investors today than there ever was before, and why there's a struggle to find great entrepreneurs because there's actually fewer entrepreneurs than there ever have been before. And corporation numbers are down compared to 20, 30 years ago. So now we've got more money than ever, fewer entrepreneurs than ever, but also a really popular narrative around startups that people find attractive, that's bringing a lot of attention to the space. So how is this all affecting what the options are for an entrepreneur? Well, this is something that we have a unique perspective. We are a venture-backed team ourselves. I specifically, I'm one of the co-founders, I'm the managing partner. I raised funding for this company, but I've also worked on getting our first customers and making our first partnerships and branding our products and building our sales materials and building our fundraising deck. So these are all things that I've been out doing and still do for our company every day, that I am very excited to share with students in our course and with you all today. Because what we've done is a little bit unique and involves community and events. We've had features on Forbes and TechCrunch, the NASDAQ. We did a webinar last week on at TechCrunch Disrupt on lean methodology. So we also talk about other topics in addition to funding. And so we hope to be a deep resource for you entrepreneurs today with all this background. These are different groups that we've worked with. You can see corporations, investor groups, governments here. This is a statement from one of our biggest clients about what we did for them in building an entrepreneurship program. This familiar face is me at the World Economic Forum right before the pandemic, and talking about why accelerators are important for innovation ecosystem. But what is an accelerator? What is this thing that Carly-Ann and John keep talking about, Stella, and why we're able to help entrepreneurs? Well, accelerators are short form programs, usually about 3 months, that have become really popular for entrepreneurs in cities and towns all over the world in the past 15 or so years. Some of the biggest startups that you've heard of, like Reddit or Dropbox, Airbnb. I'm sure everyone on this call has used each of these startups at one point or another in our daily lives comes from an accelerator. These are programs that really work in helping get entrepreneurs educated, to get them connected, and to get them the resources that they need in order to be successful. So they're typically 3-month programs. A group of entrepreneurs will attend the program at once. So you can't just sign up and be a part of it. They have a start date for a small group of entrepreneurs. Typically, they fund the entrepreneurs, and then for 3 months, the entrepreneurs are getting introductions to investors, to mentors, to advisors, working with each other to solve each other's problems and creating community together. And then at the end, they have a pitch day where they kind of have their debut and formally begin their fundraising process. Not all accelerators still work this way. Not all accelerators still focus on funding, but because that's where they come from, our work with accelerators has given us great insight into what's going on in the fundraising journey, what the reality of that process is right now, and things that entrepreneurs can do to be prepared and successful for it. When accelerators started in 2006 and 2007, there were really just 3 or 4 programs worldwide. By 2013, there were a few hundred. 6 or 7 years ago, that number jumped up to thousands. And now you all probably have access to an accelerator or an incubator of some kind, at least in your state, if not in your city or town. So that's what an accelerator is. Now, because we come from this context of acceleration, there's a few things that we want to make clear are super important to being successful in this webinar as an attendee, in the funding course that we have, and in the Parsons Entrepreneur Academy in general, and in an accelerator, if you ever go to one. Number one is to realize that getting support is a skill. It is a big part of what an entrepreneur does every day. Yes, entrepreneurs are famous for tackling ambitious problems and solving the world's biggest issues with the most advanced tech, with new technologies that they've put forward. But before they're able to solve those problems, they have to identify them. And usually, before they're solving the world's problems, they're solving their own problems as a company. In order to do that, they have to identify their own problems as a company. So getting help, identifying where you need help, when you need help, and how you need help is really a core part of being an entrepreneur. So what that means for today is that we want you to practice that skill. Be sharing your questions, be sharing your concerns. Don't just talk about your problems, but also talk about your feelings in those problems. Talk about your concerns. Bring your experiences forward. Talk about where you've had success or where you've had failure. We'll have limited opportunity to do that today, but consider it in the ways that we can, in the ways that you can. And no matter what, if you come join us at the Academy, we'll definitely be looking for you to bring those experiences forward in the course. The number one way to do that is to bring your problems forward. Don't keep them boxed up inside in this conversation today. We can't help you with the things that are going well. We can't, nobody can. That's the good news. We're excited to hear that. We're happy of you. We're happy for you. We're proud for you. But the only thing anyone can help you with is your problems. So unless you're bringing those forward, unless you're being vulnerable, you are not going to get the amount of value that you could get out of this webinar or in your entrepreneurial journey in general. And try it, act. Stop considering whether you should try this. Go out and try. And even if you just do one thing to try doing this, you'll learn so much about it. So use this webinar as a sandbox to try, but also take the network analysis document that you'll have at the end of this conversation and use it tomorrow. Try this stuff out tomorrow. Try this stuff out in conversations you're having already. And all of this, and you'll see a lot more progress come your way. And this last statement got interrupted somehow, but what it wants to say is, look for real tangible outcomes. Get insight, get access to resources, ask what communities should you be a part of, what tools should you use, what techniques are effective, and then ask for relationships. Who can you be connected to? So with all that being said, here's a few high-level tips on fundraising that while I've got this great group of creative entrepreneurs on the phone, I want to be clear about, so that no matter what you do with your network analysis or what you do with your progress as a result of this webinar, you've got some good insight to consider as you plan ahead. There's a bunch of wrong ways to psychologically position yourself when it comes to fundraising. And I call it weak fundraising. And it typically comes from putting a lot of your attention and your effort into trying to be what you think the investor needs you to be in order to get your funding. It's very natural to approach fundraising this way. It's not the best way to do it. We're often taught to, do our homework, to prepare as much as we can, and then to go out with the best possible product that we can. And if we fill out a good application or we have a good interview, we'll get into the right college or we'll get the right job. And the reality with fundraising is that you are setting the rules. You are telling the investors and the funders what success looks like and what they need to do to be a part of your success, and when they need to do it in order to be part of it. You are setting those boundaries. You are creating that structure. So you want to have a clear vision for why you want the funding, what you want to do with it, where it will bring you, and why it's something that any investor should regard as an opportunity. This can come with feelings like we heard about earlier, like imposter syndrome. But we can also, when we're fundraising, we're often doing it because we're running out of money or because we don't have money to focus on our idea. And so this creates a negative urgency. It creates a feeling that failure is impending. If I don't get this funding, it's over, is really what we feel going to bed at night, no matter how we approach fundraising. Even if we're great fundraisers, we're still dealing with this feeling. And it's really hard to avoid, but managing it and making sure that it doesn't dominate the way that you approach fundraising, the way that you strategize your fundraising process, is key. You are presenting an opportunity. You are not avoiding failure. That is the vibe that you want to have when you go out and fundraise. You are offering the funder an opportunity. You are not asking them for help. Another characteristic that we want to sort of avoid in fundraising is that we need the money. We don't need the money. We don't need the money. This is moving forward no matter what. We've got the team. We've got the determination. We've got the vision. We're doing the hard work. All these things the investor isn't bringing to the table. The only thing the investor can do to be a part of this is to give us the resources that we need to be a part of it. You're not asking them for funding because you need to fulfill a manufacturing order that you set up on your crowdfunding campaign. And so you need to have money to order the right amount of products from your manufacturing partner. This is the real reason that you need money, for sure. But when we're talking about the psychological equipment, about the position that we're trying to establish for ourselves in the fundraising process, we're not looking to pay for something, and unless we get that money, we can't move forward. That's not where we want to go. You don't want to feel, for that same reason, that you have no other options. Again, You are moving forward no matter what. This is moving ahead no matter what. You are going to find the solutions because you're a good entrepreneur who focuses on identifying their problems, communicating them to their supporters, and then finding solutions. So no matter what the investor's reaction is, or whatever your feeling is, you do have other options. And this feeling of not having them is not a good one. Another one is we will take any terms from an investor that wants to give us the capital that we want. You see this front and center when you watch something like Shark Tank on TV, right? You'll see the entrepreneurs make an offer, but then you'll see a really distant counter offer from the sharks, and the entrepreneurs take it, right? That's really not the right way to do it, and it's not the way that is going to protect your interest in your company. So you want to have a clear set of terms that you are offering. You're not only offering a certain amount of equity or a certain quality of product if you're talking to a customer, not an investor. You're offering to fulfill this in a certain amount of time. You are setting the terms. And then the last is, you want to avoid saying, well, I understand that now is not the right time for you to become a financial part of our business, so let us know when you're ready. No, this is an immediate opportunity for the right set of investors to get involved, and it's something that's not going to be available. And so this is something that this is the negative framework of strong fundraising, of fundraising with confidence, fundraising with belief and faith in what you're doing. One thing that we see entrepreneurs struggle with on an emotional level all the time is this sense of, can I really ask for $1 million? Can I really ask for $5 million? Can I really only give away 5% of my company? Am I really able to say that my company is worth $10 million or whatever we think it is? Having this mindset of abundance and having this clear, vivid vision for something just way bigger than any of us have necessarily thought of before is something you can do and that you do deserve. You are not doing something wrong by asking an investor for $100,000. You are not doing something wrong by saying that your company is worth a certain amount of money, that you're going to make a certain amount of progress in a certain amount of time. You deserve it. This is what you need to build great value in the world. You're not taking this money because you want to be rich. You're taking this money because you have an important vision that is going to be good for all of your customers, for all of your team, for all of your stakeholders, and that's going to be a really positive thing in the world. So you deserve this money. You deserve this valuation. You want to believe that your growth is imminent. You are going to achieve great things in the next 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 5 years. You are going to be working with a great set of business partners or co-founders. You are going to do something amazing with your creative business or your agency or your technology if you're a startup. That growth is heading your way. That abundance is heading your way. It's imminent. It's an opportunity for other people to be a part of it. You are the authority when it comes to your fundraising. You are setting the terms. You are the decision maker, or your team is, right? It doesn't have to be you, but you really want to assert that position into how you approach these conversations, right? Yes, an investor is welcome. A funder is welcome to negotiate with you and to say, oh, I know that you're looking for $100,000 in the next 90 days at 10% for 10% of your company. I'm a little more comfortable giving $75,000 at 7% of your company in the next 180 days. You should absolutely have flexibility for the counteroffer of a funder, but you are the starting point, not the investor. You are the decision maker when it comes to bringing your fundraising forward. And another important piece of this that's a little bit more concrete, less psychological, less emotional, is making a growth case for your funding, your fundraising opportunity, not an operational case. So what we mean by that, let me take a sip of water. What we mean by that is that you don't want to come into an investor conversation saying, we need the money to build our product or to hire a CTO or to XYZ. Otherwise, we kind of can't move forward. What you need, we need this money so that we can hire the CTO, or that so we can do marketing, or so that we can hire a sales team. That's not the reason that you're presenting you need the money. You are presenting a growth case. You're saying, with this money, we are going to increase the value of this company within the next 18 months so that the $100,000 that you put in now is worth $200,000 by next year. And that's how we're going to grow this opportunity. That's how we're going to deliver for you, Mrs. Investor or Mr. Funder. We are going to produce growth. We're going to build the team from 4 people to 40 people. We are going to get the product to 100 people when we've only got it to 10. This is the growth case that you want to make for your fundraise. You don't want to be saying, we're going to be using this money to do something that we need to do. We're going to use this money to move the ball forward, to create opportunity, to create momentum, so that this is a really cool thing. Jason, you're not interrupting. You're actually getting the point really well here. It's just like any other relationship or conversation. You want to have an idea of what your value is, what you're offering to the relationship, what the structure of that offer is, so that the other person's expectations of you are clear. Yes, these are things that you can use when you're in a job interview or in any other conversation. The last element of sort of strong fundraising, as we're calling it, is confidence. You can be more confident when you have more time. Yes, of course, because if you have more time, you probably have more money. But you can also draw confidence from time by managing time and using time to create a structure. So you saw in that example I gave a few minutes ago that we're talking to an investor, and we're giving them a limited time opportunity to become part of our company. That opportunity ends in 30 days, or it ends on September 17th. Even if you don't have a lot of time left, even if you know the end of your runway or the end of your savings is coming up soon, positioning that as, we are currently accepting financial participation from investors or from grants or from funders by September 17th. And that's the window that we have to take that kind of participation. Now you're taking your your high pressure, scary moment, and you're turning it into someone else's framework, into a structure for them to tell you whether they're going to be in. So you can use that in a conversation by saying something like, Miss Investor, we really appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. We really appreciate the interest that you have in our company. We really appreciate your advice and your mentorship, and we want that to continue no matter what. But we really see you as a great potential investor in our company, and we are actually collecting investments for our current round, ending within the next 3 weeks. So if you're able to participate as an investor, let us know before that, and we'd love to talk about it. And now you've brought up the opportunity for somebody to really put money into your business in a way that's not asking for money, in a way that's not saying you're the cool kid on the block, in the way that's saying this is the kind of relationship that we want to have, and if we get it going in this time frame, then that's what we'll do. So time is huge. Now, to let's drive towards the outcome we want at the end of this in the next 10 minutes that we want at the end of this webinar. How do we move forward toward funding relationships? Like we said before, only humans are capable of writing checks, no matter how impersonal the process or the application or the interview seems. You are convincing a person at the end of the day. There's no checklist that everybody is using to decide whether you get funding. It is something that's done in the relationship that you have with the funder. Now, depending on the kind of funding it is, there may be more qualifications, but in the most ambiguous, creative aspect of fundraising, with an angel investor, for example, or with a friend or family member, you're really just trying to get that person to feel that they want to give you that money and support your progress. So again, this is where we want to prioritize the relationship, prioritize trust as you go out and have a strong fundraising approach to getting your money. Now, because that relationship is what you're optimizing for, because it's dependent on trust, that's something that is always going to take time. It's always going to take time. It's a big part of the reason that it's important for you to have the position of strength in your conversations, because you're investing time, the very little time that you have to put this dream together, and getting them to find out whether or not they want to be a part of it in the way you need them to be at this moment. So you're investing your time, and you want to use that time to create trust with the potential funder, but also to move them towards actually funding your company, to converting into an investor or into a formal funding relationship. And then the relationship doesn't end after that. It's actually just the beginning of the relationship once you've gotten the funding. And now your job is not thanking that funder and hoping you have a return for them in 18 months or 2 years or whatever you promised. Now you've got a relationship. You even if they're not asking for it, you've got to maintain this relationship in a processed, systematic way. You've got to be arranging updates for them. You've got to be sending them a newsletter. You've got to be sending them updates. You've got to be keeping them engaged and aware of what you're doing. Silence is never a good thing in any relationship, especially in funding, especially after you've gotten funding from somebody. Now it's even more important. Yes, because you want them to be happy about their decision to fund you, but for more concrete reasons as well. Not because you want to treat them right as a person and as a business partner, but because unless you treat that relationship correctly, moving past funding, you are going to miss out on more of the funding that they could give you, right? Investors can invest more than once. Investors might also refer you to other investors with other people that could give you money. And it's way easier to get money from other people once you've gotten it from an individual they know, right? So those are huge opportunities that you miss out on unless you're treating this relationship in the right way. And they might introduce you to other kinds of money. They might introduce you to a grant or a gift from a foundation they're connected to. They might do even better and connect you to a customer. These are all things that come out of maintaining a relationship in the right way. And by the way, all of this maintenance work, it still applies even if somebody doesn't fund you. It kind of applies, especially if they don't fund you, because this is the way that you're going to stay in contact with them and make sure that you've got an opportunity to get funding with them down the line, maybe for your next company or the next time you fundraise. So funding is a relationship, but that's not just something we're saying because we want you to feel comfortable about fundraising. It's something we're saying because we want you to know it's the most important part of fundraising. So if funding is all about relationships, how do we get these relationships? What do we do? Well, there's a few things that I can talk to you about in terms of what we see working for entrepreneurs and accelerators, tactics that I used when I went out to fundraise and to get money for Stella, or that we use when we do so on behalf of other groups and other entrepreneurs and other accelerators. And so I'll talk about some of those basics. But it's also where the network analysis will come into play. So let's talk about some basics of networking, and the importance of your second degree network. And we're already running close to the end of the clock here, so we'll have to move pretty fast. Excuse me. Anyway, we'll get to all the questions in the end. For whatever reason, I am not able to see the Q&A portion, so I am sorry for that, everyone, but we'll get to them. Oops. Great. So one of the most simplifying ways, thank you, Carlene, that we can think about networking is that it's not the process of going into a high stress situation that where you don't know a bunch of people and you now have to put a lot of energy into being at an event and being interested in the conversations that you have with a new person and trying to move that towards some sort of outcome for your business, or realizing that it's not going to have an outcome for your business and then trying to find a way to exit the conversation. It doesn't have to be about cold calling somebody who hasn't heard from you before, or sending them a cold email, or any of these uncomfortable, difficult things that we think about when we think about networking. In fact, if you are doing those things, you are doing it wrong. And what I mean by that is the importance of your second degree network. And this is a notion that's just becoming popularized by John Hill, who's the VP of Network at Techstars. Techstars is one of the biggest and most renowned accelerators in the industry. They have a portfolio of 3,000 tech companies that they've invested in. And so John Hill is responsible for building their mentor network and their investor network and their partnership network. So really one of the best authorities in this space when it comes to acceleration, but also to network. He helped build build LinkedIn at an early stage as well. And so he's really, likes to talk about the importance of a second degree network. And a second degree network is the people that are friends with your friends. They're the people that you're kind of connected to. You may even have met some of the individuals in your second degree network at a party or at a dinner or some other sort of interaction. Your second degree network is the network that you have. It's your network. It's your relationships. You just don't have a direct connection to them yet. You don't have their email address, or you don't have their phone number, and you don't have a quick way to get in contact with them, right? You haven't crossed that initial barrier that really defines your first degree network. You may have had a conversation with somebody in your second degree network, but you just don't have your own relationship with them. The challenge of networking is that you don't want to go out and expand your first degree network. You don't want to go out and increase the number of people that you know, right? There's a really low ceiling to that. I know that there's some studies and research that says that the human mind is only capable of maintaining social information for 100 relationships. Nobody is able to build a company on 100 relationships, I promise. And then even at the biggest levels, the largest initiatives that we know of, whether they're companies or political campaigns or something else, involve millions of relationships. Governments, sometimes involve hundreds of millions or billions of relationships. So increasing your first degree network is not the key to success. You want to be able to leverage your existing first degree network, leverage your existing relationships to get to where you need to go in fundraising. Now, this is really counterintuitive, right? You might think, well, John, if I knew people that knew investors, then I might need a class from the Entrepreneur Academy to fill me in on how to do this. And you're right. Right? If you had these relationships already active for yourself, you would have the money and you'd be focusing on building your business right now. Now, the reason that second degree networks are important and optimizing for reaching a second degree connection is important is because this is the process that will get you to your third degree connections and your fourth degree connections and your 10th degree connections, right? Somebody who's 10 relationships away from you, 10 introductions away from you. These are the people that are billionaires or millionaires or famous or whatever, or influential at a big corporation and have a lot of money to spend. By optimizing for your second degree network, you're setting yourself up to get to those faraway relationships, but you're only doing it 1 degree at a time. So that's number one. That's number one reason why second degree connections are important. The other reason is you might actually know somebody who knows an investor or a funder, and maybe they haven't told you yet. Maybe they don't feel like they want to give you that connection yet. Maybe they just haven't thought of it yet. But for whatever reason, you may be wrong. You may have the first funder or the first loan or the first grant or the first patron or donor that you need for your art piece already in your network. And so the challenge is finding out how to get to them. And here's where the network analysis becomes so important. So let's take a look at this. So here's the asset. Here's the network analysis worksheet that we want to have, that we want you to fill out. And this is not something that you need to fill out right now, and or your experience on this webinar hasn't been successful. This is something that we want you to have and to use as you move out of this webinar and start experimenting with this stuff. Because if we make one point in this webinar, it's that you can start going to do this now with your existing relationships. And so the purpose of this document is to really make the access challenge, the challenge of access in fundraising, a more solidified and concrete challenge. And we can do that by not worrying about whether we know the right billionaire or the right famous person or the right corporate contact right now. We can do it by just sketching out our existing relationships and making sure that we are in position to get them to bring us to where we need to go. And so our first degree network is built out of things that every human hopefully has. You've got friends, you've got family, you've got work colleagues, you've got institutions that you're affiliated with. Affiliations are an important distinction here, right? It's not an individual. An affiliation is the high school that you went to, your football club, if you played football in high school, or your music lessons, the group that you take music lessons with. That's an affiliation. A group, an activity is an affiliation. Your college, if you went to college, is an affiliation. Your employer, if you worked at a restaurant, that employer is an affiliation. They're constantly managing new relationships that you could benefit from. If you work for a big corporation, that corporation is an affiliation. If you volunteer at a nonprofit or something else in your community, that organization is an affiliation. So don't just think about this. Write down in your notebook, who are your top 5 friends that when you need help, you ask for help. You might know who they are in your head as I ask you this question, but actually write it down. It's going to feel good, I promise. It's an important exercise to go through. And you'll have this list of friends, of colleagues, of family, of groups that can help you see the resources that you already have and how you can start building a process around engaging all of them. Just making the list is important. Who are groups or people that you've asked for help with before, right? This might be somebody who was a teacher who was a mentor or an advisor to you at some point in your work life or your education. People whose purpose in your life has been helping you in some way, a coach. Those are people that you want to create, have a place in your list. Your social media is an affiliation, like your school. It's not a coincidence that Facebook was created around the Harvard network, right? That's not a coincidence. Social media is a place for affiliation. Communities, right? A little bit different than social media. It's not just about, posting anything social. Online communities. If you have a Facebook group that you're a part of, or you're on Mighty Networks with other people that like a certain kind of car or have the same hobby, those communities are affiliations as well. And now look, now that you've got this list, you kind of have a starting point. So just by listing this out, you've got a resource, you've got a direction. And then we want to think about, well, how do I be sure that I'm following John's guidelines on strong fundraising, that I am coming into these conversations with the right equipment? There was a question earlier about cold emails. How do we do that right? Well, here's how. By defining what you're looking for and what the structure for your ask is up front before you make the ask. Don't wait for the conversation to offer it to you. Don't wait for that person to say, hey, I want to give you an introduction to somebody who'd be a great business partner for you, when you really need them to write a check. It's great that they want to make those connections, and you might want to take them up on that, but you want to say, I really want to constrain our conversation right now to what I'm focusing my outreach around, which is fundraising. So whether it's you want somebody to be a donor, you want somebody to support your artwork, you want somebody to lend you money, you want somebody to become an equity partner, you want somebody to hook you up with a grant. Define what you're asking for, and write it down, please. Write it down. Write it down. Write it down. Write it down. Just the act of putting this somewhere is going to be powerful. And don't just say, I'm looking for a donor. I'm looking for a donor to give me a certain amount of money, right? Go back to that strong fundraising slide and sort of remember, you don't need to feel guilty or uncomfortable about putting an actual dollar amount to your ask. It's just as bad to say, hey, thank you for offering the connection. I'm looking for funding. Are you willing to give me funding? No? Oh, okay, thanks. No, you want to say, I'm looking for funding, and this is the structure of funding that we're looking for. I realize you may be comfortable contributing $1,000 or $5,000 in an investment or a loan, but we're really looking for $25,000 at this particular moment. So if that's a level of participation you're interested in, then that's great. But if not, we'll don't worry, we'll talk again soon. So what is the amount that you want from someone? Don't leave it up to them. Identify what amount you need to accomplish the next stage of progress for yourself. If you are trying to create a lookbook of your artwork that you want to use to give to buyers, or to give to your next round of donors or patrons, then say that. And we're looking for 10,000. We had a student in our last cohort at the funding course. That was what he was trying to do with his funding. So it can be anything, but be clear about what it is. And then, most importantly, define what happens after this conversation. Maybe they say no, or they'll think about it, and you say, great, thank you for that feedback. Here's where I want to talk next. I want to be able to give you updates. I want to be able to have a coffee with you next quarter. I want to be able to tag you on posts that we post about the business on LinkedIn or on Facebook. These are all things that you can define about the relationship, no matter what happens with the funding. Now, if they do say yes, you want to say, okay, for our funders, we are going to have a group call every quarter that will give you updates. You're going to have a weekly email And you're also going to have a monthly meeting with me, the business owner, so that you can have your input. Money deserves a seat at the table. Whatever you want that relationship to look like after they give you your funding can be part of your ask. Isn't that something? Right? Let them know what the relationship looks like after funding. And these are all things that you can do to really make the relationship one of trust, and to make it an effective ask. Now, obviously, this is all stuff that takes a ton of nuance, a ton of experience, and a ton of experimentation. So if this feels like, okay, it's a little bit clearer now, John, but I don't know that I can wake up tomorrow and do this, that's okay. If you're just one step closer to giving this a try, that's all we're asking for. That's the only place you need to be. So let's go back here and answer some of the questions. And Carly-Ann, I know it said she was going to bring on some of the questions at the end. Hey, Carly-Ann. But before we get to the questions, is there anything else we need to cover?
So yes, before we get to the Q&A, I wanted to pop back in, thank everyone for coming, and thank our amazing co-sponsor, Parsons Continuing and Professional Education, for partnering with us on this webinar. So for everyone who's tuned in, as promised, if you would like to join John's full course and dive a bit more deeply into strategies around fundraising for your creative business, we would like to offer you a code that will get you 50% off of the course. So the code is FUND, F-U-N-D. So if you go onto our website and go onto our course catalog page, if you click on John's course, once you get to the checkout page, you can apply the code FUND. So F-U-N-D. It's in the chat. If you'd like to join the course, just keep in mind that the offer expires on August 28th. So at 11:59 p.m. on August 28th, it will no longer be valid. So if you're interested in redeeming the offer, please do so right away. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email us at pea@newschool.edu. So on that note, we will get to the Q&A.
And then just before we go to the Q&A, all the attendees that came on this, you did the hard work of signing up for this webinar and paying attention. That code is your reward for your hard work. So thanks for being here, and we hope to see you again.
All right, so let me know when you're ready.
Ready for questions. Go ahead.
All right, so the first question, and before I start, everyone who's still on, please look at the Q&A box. If there are questions that you love or resonate with you, click on the like button and we'll address the questions that are upvoted first. All right, so first question. While we are reaching out to potential financial partners, what sort of conversations should we have with them to initiate and nurture the relationships, though we are not seeking money yet?
Great. Yeah, so we can just directly echo some of the things that we left off with on that last on the network analysis document. Define for them what the relationship is going to look like afterwards. What are some of the things that you might need help with that you want to keep the door open with them on? Can you shoot them questions on email? Can you ask them for introductions? Can you ask them to share things on social media when you have things to share? How often are you going to meet with them after you have this meeting? So I think that's the most important thing to kind of define in the non-financial part of the relationship.
All right, next question that has the most votes. Can you use content to help with fundraising like Kickstarter or an NFT? Are you referring, when you say can you use content, are you referring to this content or content in general?
If the question is, can you use content from other fundraising efforts in pitching? I think it's part of the value of doing a fundraise, of doing something on Kickstarter. Carly-Ann and I have talked about this. Part of the value that they offer is the way that they help you tell your story, and the way that a fundraise makes you make a deck that tells the story of your company and how somebody can participate. So all of that content. Oh, can you sell that content? Use that to help with fundraising. So this is good. Yes, the only form of fundraising is not getting investment. It can be somebody being a customer or giving you a loan or something like that. If you want to sell the content and you've got people asking to buy it for whatever reason, I don't see that as it being being anything wrong with that. If they like maybe a logo that you created or another piece of branding material that you created, it's basically just merchandise, and that's something any company can sell around its brand. I remember there was a company called Holstein back in 2013 that had a poster of inspiring sentences that went viral. They were using that to express to their customers and to their stakeholders what their culture was, what their values were, but it took on a life of its own. So absolutely, I think content can be used in other creative ways.
All right, so this is a two-part question, but we'll go one at a time. Is the value of your business the potential annual profits, annual revenue, or something else?
How do you value your business?
An example, Amazon and Facebook made a loss for many years, even when fully in production. What data do you need, and how do you sell the dream realistically?
That's a great question. An actual valuation is actually not going to be that important in the early stages of your first fundraise. A valuation will become important when you bring on institutional funding, which means funding that is coming from a professional venture capitalist group or a private equity firm. And they are buying a certain amount of shares for a certain price, right? It's called a priced round of fundraising. If you're getting to that point, then you've already fundraised once or twice in an unpriced round. So actually putting together the financial projections, forecasts for your profit and loss, and when you expect to be profitable, or how much revenue you expect revenue to grow, is typically something that's not going to come until a more formal fundraising round. So don't worry about it yet. However, you do want to be ready to talk about some of those strong fundraising traits. Why is your company worth investing in right now? Well, it's because you've got a great vision. It's because you've got a great team. It's because you're approaching a market that's growing, because you've got an MVP or a prototype that people like. It's because you've got a large list of customers that are already interested in interacting with your brand, or that have said that they would buy it if you built it. Those are all things that you can say add to the value of your company without having to say, we're going to achieve this amount of revenue in this amount of time, so invest now.
All right, so this is the second part of the question. So I feel like there are some of the things you probably touched on in your last, in answering the first question, but it's what needs to happen before you can approach an accelerator. What stage of your endeavor, and how do you make that contact?
Yes, great. Carly-Ann, would be great to see your reaction to this as well. You worked at a great accelerator for several years. For me, my reflex is, that's the same question as the when should I start fundraising question. Now, approach them now. Start talking to them now. You can apply and try to get the conversation started that way. If they have applications open, most of them probably won't have applications open. But otherwise, start using that second degree network, right? You are connected to somebody who works at the accelerator you want to go to. It's just a matter of getting that introduction to them and how many times you need to run the second degree process to get to them. And like we said, that takes time. So if you start navigating your network towards that accelerator today, you will get that introduction, you will get that meeting soon.
And look out for things like office hours. There are some accelerators that have those types of opportunities, and it's just a great way for entrepreneurs to meet whoever helps to screen the startups that get into that accelerator and ask them questions. And it's just a good way for you to feel out what stage you're at and what preferred stage that they're looking for.
Yeah, engage with them. Pay attention to their social media. They ask questions. They want engagement or respond. They see it. Go to their events.
All right. How do you make a funding pitch? What's the approach? How do you grow? How should one look at funding versus investing on your own?
The first part of that question is I have a strong response to. Part of, we have a whole module in the course on this, but my favorite acronym for putting together a first draft for pitch is PPT MTA. That's the acronym. It's 6 slides. The first P is problem. The second P is product. The T is traction. MTA, market. What is the market opportunity? Who is the team? What is your ask? If you bring that acronym into any pitch, whether it's your deck or a conversation, you have a full portrait of your company ready to go. Thanks, Aaron. That's very kind. Aaron was a great student in our first session. So PPT MTA is I think that the quickest, easiest way to get together some sort of pitch for your company. That was the first question in that question, right? Or did I screw that up?
How do you make a funding pitch?
Yeah, so that's how you make a funding pitch.
What's the approach? How do you grow? It's a little, okay. So I think the second part, the third part of this question would be useful to a lot of people. Why should one look at funding versus investing on your own?
Why look for external funding instead of spending your own money?
Yep.
Great. That is a good question. Well, most of the time it's because we don't have enough of our own money to fund the level of vision that we have. But really, none of us are going to achieve the full potential of ourselves or our ideas alone. And again, relationships are key to that. Having the right relationships with your team, it's the same reason that you want to have external funding, right? You're not just getting that money, you're getting the full buy-in of that relationship, which can lead to customers, can lead to insight, can lead to, it's somebody who's in the process with you, has something at stake and needs it to work as well. And the more you've got people involved who have skin in the game with you, number one, the better the entrepreneurial journey is going to be. But also number two, just the more successful and the better your outcome is going to be, both for your customers and for your mission.
All right. How do you analyze the break-even point and explain to an investor?
So I think this is actually on the spectrum of what we need to have prepared before we start fundraising. This is something that some investors might care about. If you encounter an investor who wants to know when you plan to break even at an early stage, number one, they may not be a good early stage investor for you, right? Typically, early stage investors are there because they want to work with you, or they're inspired by your business or your traction so far. They're not necessarily investing in you because they want you to create a profitable business in the next 12 months and get them more money. That's the hope, but the hope is that we all do that together if the business is successful. So it could be, if you're finding yourself having to answer that in a conversation with an early stage investor, might be an indication that even if they offer you the money, you suggest returning to that opportunity at a later time. You don't want to have to figure out what your break-even point is too early, because then you're setting an expectation that you just don't have the information to make. You are building your team, you're building your product, you're getting your first customers. I mean, you might expect to break even at a low level, depending on how you expect to grow. But you also may be way bigger than that. Do you want to constrain yourself? Do you want to plan yourself out of growth? Like, no. So don't let the fact that you don't have a break even identified yet mean that you've lost that point in the conversation with an investor. You can use it as a turn and say, I understand that you're concerned about the break even point. We're not identifying a timeline for break even yet, because this market is so new, or because our technology, our product is so disruptive, or because our team is creating so many things so fast. We think that break even point could be in many different places depending on how we grow. So that would be how I'd think about the importance of a break even at an early stage of fundraising.
All right, this one is super time relevant. So this person asked how to get started cultivating relationships with strangers in COVID era isolation.
So I'll push back on this. We never want to be pursuing relationships with people we're not necessarily connected to already. If you're at a highly social setting, like you're out at a party for a friend or whatever, and you meet somebody relevant, then sure, follow up on that. But spending a lot of your time and energy intentionally going out and meeting more new people is very low return. Again, what you want to do is use the network analysis document, look at your existing trusted relationships, and think critically about what you want to ask. If it's for an introduction, then be clear about who that right introduction is. And you'll either get that introduction from the person in your first degree network, or you'll get the best introduction that they have, and that introduction will lead to the one that you need. But that's the process you want to be working towards. You don't want to be spending a lot of time doing cold outreach to people you don't have a connection to yet. It's a really kind of mind-bending concept, but it's important to experiment with.
All right. In terms of packaging your brand and vision, what exactly are investors looking for in terms of presentation? What are all of the components involved?
So, a great investor will help you build this, right? If you haven't built a deck before, but you get connected to an investor or somebody who could be a financial stakeholder, and they're really bought in, they'll help you make that case with them, right? So for my investor, one of our first investors was a pair of brothers, and one brother had sold his company for millions of dollars, and the other one became a partner in the venture firm that he started. I was friends with the younger brother, and he wanted to make the case to the primary investor, his older brother, that Stella was a good match. So we worked together to create the case that the other investor needed to be excited. I mean, that's what a good funding relationship can do, and it's part of what you should look for, right? You don't want to work with investors that expect you to have it all figured out right now, because they're always going to have something that you haven't figured out yet. Look for the ones that are going to build that pitch deck with you, that are going to be clear about their expectations and help you meet them.
How can you argue a growth case that increases the value, but you are still not revenue positive in the next 18 months or whatever the time frame is?
This is also a more advanced fundraising concept. that's only going to occur once you're locked into a certain growth plan at a certain valuation, and that there are lead and institutional investors that you've promised a certain level of growth to by a certain time. So that's typically not going to happen until you're at a Series A or a Series B level of funding. But it's a great thing to be thinking about, and, making your growth case. What are the things that you want to achieve for the business, right? Focus on the things, on the growth aspects of your business, not the need aspects. That's how I kind of approach this question. If most of us are fundraising for the first time or at an early stage in our fundraising, focus on what you're going to do with the money. You're going to get your first 20 customers. You are going to get your first 2 employees. You are going to create a refreshed brand. You are going to get a certain amount of media impressions. These are all growth outcomes that you're going to use the money to achieve. They're better than saying, we're going to like spend the money on something we need to buy right now for our company. So, and I think that's closer to where I want you to be thinking about in terms of a growth mindset when it comes to fundraising, at least at an early stage.
All right, let's talk resources for a little bit, because there are a couple of questions that are resources focused. How do you find accelerators is one.
Reaching out to sell. Accelerators are always looking for great entrepreneurs to connect with. We are happy to give you recommendations on who you should approach, and in some cases can even make a connection, but that requires the opt-in of an accelerator, so no promises. But finding the right accelerator it comes down to a lot of the same, some of the same things that we're talking about, right? There are many accelerators now. Not all of them are as well known as Y Combinator or Stars, and you're going to be referred to them by people that you talk to. If you're interested in an accelerator, start broadcasting that interest to your first degree network, and you might know somebody already who's connected to one, or connected to a startup that went to one, or somebody who is a mentor at one. But again, find that second degree connection that can get you towards knowing what the right program is and getting connected to it. It works just as well for getting information as it does for getting introductions. So ask around is really the best thing. And then a lot, these accelerators are working hard to find you. So even if you don't go to an event, like look at the event pages of tech events and see what programs are there. Look for the speakers and on social media. Who is leading the conversation on early stage startups? A lot of times it's people that are working at accelerators. So that's my quick input.
All right, what can a student expect from your class?
More of this, right? We're going to be talking a lot about how to manage the relationships and the conversations, the language of talking about funding, right? We will talk about some technical aspects of designing a term sheet and an offer and what venture capitalists are and how they work. But I don't think that's the best reason to do the class. I think the best reason to do the class is to really understand how to conduct these relationships and these communications and to find these people in organizations. The second thing is that the course is, the theme that we've hit on here of sharing your experiences, sharing your problems, is something that we review every week as a group, and that we talk about as peers. We're all entrepreneurs challenged by the same things. This class is not about me teaching you what to do. It's about us working together to find out your problems and to solve them together. And that requires input from every student in the class.
And what are some of the key tools that people take away after they've completed the course?
Yeah. So one of my favorites is the PPT MTA template, but we also talk about how to make your own your own deal, your own term sheet. So you'll be able to work on that if you want to. You'll be able to write your own investor newsletter. You'll be able to write your own emails and conduct your own conversations with an investor. You'll have a template for negotiating with an investor and a set of techniques for attacking those objections and making sure that you're winning the conversation. Those are my favorite things that you get out of the course.
All right. Let's see. Can you talk about what an ideal funding agreement structure looks like?
An ideal funding agreement structure. If this is asked, do you think this is asking like what are the elements of a term sheet?
Yeah.
Well, actually, even if it's not a term sheet, here's what I'll say about this: is that a good agreement of any kind, whether it's a funding agreement or not. And remember, funding is just another kind of relationship. A good agreement is going to have a few things. It's going to have the length of your commitment. How long are you promising this person you'll get a return for them, or that you'll deliver this service? What deliverables are you promising them? What are you giving them materially? What are those specific things that they are going to get out of this engagement with you? In what time are they going to get those things? What is that going to cost them? This doesn't have to be a financial thing, but it has to be what their commitment is. Does it cost them $25,000? Does it cost them meeting with you every week? Does it cost them helping you promote the deliverables that you make for them? Does it cost them making introductions for you? Right? If these relationships don't end up in funding, there's plenty of other things that they can be built around, but you want to be sure, you want to be clear about the other group's commitment. So those are the three things that I think any good agreement has, right? What your promise is, how long you are promising you'll deliver on that promise for, and what that is going to cost them.
All right. I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're like 7 minutes over.
Wow.
So let me know if you're okay with taking a couple more questions and how many more you could take if possible.
Let's do one or two more.
Okay. All right. So how do I approach networking while I'm still ideating, researching, positioning my business? I don't have a solid business name or concept to sell yet, but I see potential stakeholders everywhere.
And this is almost the best time to be going out and having those conversations. It's a huge opportunity to win trust and engagement from potential team members, potential investors, potential customers down the line. The earlier that people are getting involved with your progress, the more they're going to see you do, and the more excited they're going to be. So even if it's just an idea, or even if you just have a market you're excited about, or you just decided to go into business with somebody, but you don't know what your business is going to be yet, start identifying, who are the people you need to get in contact with. You can use the network analysis document to help with this, right? And we also do this in an early stage in the class. Identify who those stakeholders are. Maybe you need insight on the product. Maybe you need insight on the customer. Maybe you need to understand what the investor expectations are in this industry. Whatever it is, make a short list of who those initial new conversations and relationships are, and make it your job to start those conversations in the same way that you are making it your job to build out your product, to get your first customers, to do all the things that you need to do as an entrepreneur. So just do it now.
All right. I want to try to pick something that's going to.
A good last question.
Yeah. Any books or resources you could recommend for beginning businesses? So I'll let John recommend the books, but also check out our course catalog for resources in our network.
I think the course catalog is even a good place to like see things that you could be thinking about and may not be because you haven't built out a business yet. The courses that Parsons has put together are like very targeted on the specific things that you need to be thinking about to move forward. So even just for a thinking exercise can be good to look at. For me, you know, obviously I have a lot of belief in the value of relationships when it comes to building a good business. Good relationships are built around good negotiations and good agreements. They really are. Managing your expectations of each other is literally everything. People get upset when their expectations aren't met. They get hurt when their expectations aren't met. So in a lot of ways, your success as an entrepreneur is dependent on setting those expectations and delivering on them, or updating them as soon as you can if they change. The book that I think is the best at helping anyone do that, that helped me do that earlier this year even, is called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Never Split the Difference. It's Chris Voss is a former FBI negotiator, and he is using all of his tactics in negotiating with terrorists and kidnappers and drug traffickers to help business people negotiate their difficult situations. If you're entering a conversation with a co-founder that wants to quit, or you're entering a conversation with a customer that's not happy, or you're entering a conversation with an investor who wants their money back. These are all the tough scenarios that you might face as an entrepreneur that this book can help you be prepared for. However, it's valuable not because of the problems it will help you solve. It's valuable because of the relationships it will help you build if you read it and obey its input when you start these relationships. So again, I believe you should start these relationships right now. But if you want to go the extra mile and be extra prepared, know how to manage expectations and deliver on them. And this book, Never Split the Difference, is a great resource in understanding how to do that.
All right. Well, thank you so much, John, for going overtime and taking additional questions. We appreciate it. Thank you again to everyone who tuned in. And thank you again to our partner tonight, Continuing and Professional Education, Parsons Continuing and Professional Education. Everyone, don't forget, if you're interested in taking John's full course and getting some more one-on-one time and going through the experience with a group of entrepreneurs, please click on the link that's in the chat and check out more details on the course and use the code FUND if you'd like to get 50% off. And don't forget that the offer ends at 11:59 on August 28th. So thank you all. We look forward to seeing you all at other Parsons Entrepreneur Academy events. Please join our social media channels. Our Instagram link is in the chat, and join our network. It's a great way to keep up on updates on other amazing conversations and webinars that we host. All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, John. Bye.